What is going on, family? I hope everybody is doing safe and doing well right now during these times during the hurricane. I've seen some footage from down in the southeast part of the country in the United States, especially in Florida, where I've seen a lot of the already damaged, and I've seen reports of already up to like 40 people, I think, that have been injured in the hurricane. So I hope that everybody is doing well, staying safe, and hopefully evacuated if you had the means to be able to do so. I am very excited today because we are going to be checking out another song from SOFIA ISELLA. I have really enjoyed her song Us and Pigs. I thought it was a very thought-provoking and very challenging song against a very patriarchal society. And I think it's important for all artists to stand up and tell their stories no matter how uncomfortable it might make some people feel. So let's go ahead and check out her song, The Doll People.
The doll people are not men, they are made of ice and glass. Our skin is clay and painted blue, our head can detach. We are statues with a pulse, we are art you can fuck. The doll people are quiet. What is there to say? Art does not interpret itself. There are men with a day to save. We are paintings with legs. We are art you can fuck.
Oh my God.
Drink the dolls, legs spread like battery, your wife, whore, mistress, maid, mother, the beauty and the buyer. Take the screaming one, because a woman who doesn't want it is much harder than one that does.
Oh boy. I feel like she is like the opposite of Taylor Swift, if that makes any sense. Like, Taylor Swift has gotten like a lot of like a reputation throughout her career as like being the one that like airs out guys' dirty laundry, like in a way like that. And I feel like that's exactly what she does. I feel like she airs out like men's dirty laundry like in a whole different way, where she just kind of gets to like straight to the point of like the misogynist perspective. To me, the doll people is just kind of equating it to like the idea of just like a Barbie, or like the Cabbage Patch Kids, like the little baby dolls, anything that girls were basically given as like as little girls, like, you know, those kinds of toys. And like these are like, you know, especially when it comes to like Barbie, right? There's a lot of like body images and a lot of like negative things that have come along with the idea of Barbie. I know for a lot of people that it didn't have those kinds of effects, but there were a lot of negative effects that also came along with Barbie. It's kind of like anything. There's a lot of positive, and there's also always going to be negative. It's just the way the universe works. I don't think it's necessarily fair to say that either one is wrong or right, because I think that I understand both perspectives. I just also think that every individual is unique, and every individual is different. So how something might affect one person might not affect the other. But I think it's also very important to take that to fully into consideration when it comes to all things. She makes references throughout the entire song, equating like women to being like art, where like paintings or clay were painted this way, but we're just art that you can fuck. Once again, I feel like, am I supposed to even be talking about this stuff? I am well aware of the term mansplaining, and I promise you that is never what I'm trying to do. A woman who doesn't want it is hotter than one who does. I feel like there's a lot of guys that probably really need to hear that and understand maybe a little bit of maybe how you treat that special lady in your life, that they need attention and they need that attention as well. And I know it's really easy to get comfortable with somebody after a long time, but I think it's also really important to make sure that your partner always knows that they're desirable to you and that those kinds of feelings haven't changed. And on the flip side of that, I think honestly, when it comes to a lot of like the male perspective, I think there's a lot of societal pressures that we are given to be alphas and to not be open or weak. And there's been so many decades and decades and decades, and fathers and fathers and fathers who have just pushed down that kind of masculine toxicity to their sons and made all these pressures for them to be a certain way. And I'm not trying to make excuses for people. I'm just kind of more or less trying to explain a little bit that I think a lot of those pressures, the same way that girls feel those pressures when it comes to Barbie dolls and you have to look pretty for a guy, guys also feel that they have to be tough. And it's really hard to kind of get past a lot of those primal instincts that I think a lot of guys are more encouraged to more give into than really fight those natural urges. And I think a lot of that when it comes to like the idea of someone being hotter that doesn't want you really ties to that kind of alpha mentality that men have really been pushed on for so many years. And I'm not saying it's right and that we should give into it. I think that it's one of those things that as guys that we should recognize those things and that we should basically make sure that we don't put ourselves in positions to ever kind of give into those kinds of feelings or urges. I don't think that it's unnatural to have that kind of attraction to somebody else, but I think that it is unfair to act upon those feelings and to go beyond those initial instincts. I really hope I got through that without saying anything that's going to get me in trouble, because I promise, ladies, I am on your side. The guys might hang me up on a cross, though.
Mistress made mother. Wife or mistress made mother. The doll people are alive, or so they say. You can never trust the art these days. To be admired takes precedence over admiring. To be desired takes importance over desiring. Drink the doll's legs spread like buttery. Wife, whore, mistress, maid, mother. The beauty and the buyer take the screaming one, because a woman who doesn't want it is much harder than one that does. Pain popping off of us like rockets, stepped right out of a fantasy. The whistle stuck to our pockets. The beauty and the buyer take the screaming one, because a woman who doesn't want it is much harder than one that the doll people are gone. They don't know what happened. They looked under her skirts one morning, but all they saw were maggots. They banged their head on the wall. They fucked the yard on that afternoon. The dolls are off running and laughing together, swimming in the milk of the moon. Wife, whore, mistress, maid, mother. Wife, whore, mistress, maid, mother. Wife, whore, mistress, maid, mother.
She is something like magnificent and special. Like, I know that she's really talking about a lot of like very like shocking like lyrics and just very direct and very blunt in her message, the way that she goes to choose to go about her art. And I'm not saying that I don't like that. I do like bold artists, and I feel like that she is a bold artist. She draws emotion out of you. She makes you kind of feel uncomfortable like listening to her. And I think that's also the point, is because she's trying to show that the life of a woman, I think, feels uncomfortable. And there's a lot of pressures in society that men have put on women to be and act a certain way, especially to be perfect. Like, there's a lot of pressures where if you have to be X, Y, and Z, or else we're not going to want you. I talked a lot in my last video about how a lot of men treat women like trophy wives, and this, I feel like, is like kind of like part 2 of that same kind of story. I'm not sure which one came first, but it's like really diving into that same overall topic. Boy, does she just make it difficult to kind of be a man in the room, but that's okay. That's what I feel like. There's a lot of guys that kind of need to hear this kind of music, and they need to hear these kinds of messages, because I think there's so many guys out there that like perceive themselves as one way, but they don't really understand that women look at them in a completely different facet in life. A lot of guys will say that women are the most complicated people on the planet, and I really honestly don't think that they are. It's not to say that women aren't smart or intelligent or that they can't be complicated. I think that they can be all of those things. But I think a lot of times most women just really want somebody who just appreciates them and actually recognizes them for what they do in their life for somebody else. But I also think that's the patriarchy at work to make excuses as to why women don't like you, is to say that they're too complicated for me. My best friend at the youngest age that I can remember was a girl, and I feel like I've always had a very close girlfriend because I've always felt like girls were way more interesting to hang out with guys were in the first place. I feel like they talk about more interesting things, and I feel like they're overall just more fascinating than a group of guys are. Not to say that I don't like hanging down with the boys, because the boys are just a different vibe, but hanging out with the girls is a lot different than hanging out with the boys. And I've just been blessed to have a lot of great women in my life to give me a lot of the female perspective, and I feel like that's all we really should do as men, is listen to what women tell us and the stories that they have to tell us, because that's really all that we can do. We're putting our own expectations onto somebody else who's nothing like us and expects them to be a certain way when we don't even understand what it's like to be them. And that's why I really like artists like SOFIA, because I feel like she gives you thought-provoking pieces. Even just like the piano tune that she plays, it's simple, but it's moving, and it just makes you feel something like the entire time that she's listening. Like even when she's not really singing any words, or she's not really using any kind of lyrical like tones or anything like that, like when it's just the piano, it just makes you feel something. And I feel like every step of the song is meant to draw emotion out of you, and I feel like she does that beautifully. I appreciate you guys so much for hanging out with me today, and if you'd like to see me check out any more from SOFIA, please be sure to let me know what the next song you'd like me to check out is, and if you haven't joined the Foxtrot family, there is always room for you. Until next time, I appreciate you for watching.